Yeah, get it on. Welcome back to Dusty Pool, brought to you by Fit Lab, Tailwind Nutrition. I'm Maxa, Capital Cycles. Hey guys, so let me tell you all about the weekend double header race. Okay, so we had two. The PNP Summer Series Race 3, which was the granddaddy of the series. And an interesting thing happened to me there. And I was thinking, is it possible to throw money at a problem, a weight-related problem? What would that have got me? Would it have changed the result on the weekend? I've done the math, I'll find out. I found out, and I'll tell you the answer. And race 2 was on Sunday. Yesterday was the Masters Cycling Club graded race in a drizzly Carrington. That was less interesting, although I did have some thoughts and feelings about that I think would be useful for you if you find yourself in a race where, I don't know, maybe you kind of want to know what you should do if you're in a grade there's not that many people, maybe you're strongest. What do you do? How do you ride? What do you do? I got thoughts. So let's have a look at race number 1 on Saturday. Sorry, have a drink there. PNP race 3, so the third of the PNP Port Nicholas and Paniki summer series of races. Good mass start races, Grand Fondo, Medio Fondo, 5 races once every 2 to 3 weeks over summer and into, I guess, autumn. The race 3, it's kind of the queen race, if you like, because it's the hilliest. Finishes up a big climb. Something interesting happened here, I'll tell you about it. So let's just run over the results, what happened. Total time of 2:36, distance 89.3 kilometers. Climbing 1,557 meters, which is pretty strong in that sort of amount of time for an amateur race. 2,291 kilojoules. Let's say 3, 4, 5, 6, I don't know, probably 7 or even 8 McDonald's hamburgers consumed in that. Pretty good. The average speed, 34.2 kilometers an hour. Average power, 244 watts. But let's compare that. Let's compare our average power to the effective power, i.e. how hard it kind of really was when you take into account accelerative forces, is 309 watts. A big difference. That's all because of the rapid, hard accelerations on climbs and things like that. So even though, and by the way, 244 watts, that lower figure, well, that's going to be skewed a little lower by the fact that we're freewheeling down climbs a lot of the time from climate going down the other side. All of that, quite a low. My heart rate's all messed up. I made a mistake, which was I managed to unpair my heart rate at the start of the race. I don't know the anti-D number, so when I tried to repair it, I didn't know if I was linking up to someone else's heart rate or not. Okay, the hell would you know? I don't know my anti-D number, so I didn't know that, so heart rate's all cocked up. Cadence 91 is pretty good. So, as a whole, it kind of went exactly how I thought it would. We had climbs up, I don't know, some pretty strong. The one there's a, let's get it wrong. I don't know what this climb is. It goes out. It's a kind of a dog leg that goes out, and a turnaround to Tafarao. All of these climbs you can see here, all 2 to 3 minutes, 416. So 5.5 watts per kilo to stay in the front selection. So about 3 or 4 strong climbs in the first half of the race, 2 to 3 minutes, 5.2, 5.3 watts per kilo. something like that. That's what you need to stay in the front selection. Those climbs thinned out the Gran Fondo bunch to still a reasonably large group. I'm going to say, 20 riders or something. The main selection point was the second to last climb. Let's zoom in on this because this was pretty much on my limit. It's the limit of what I'm capable of at the moment, which was this final climb here. It's always very selective. 5 minutes, 40 seconds, 444 watts, around 5.5 watts per kilo. That's very strong, and it did halfway. The group of 20 started reducing. Excellent climbers like Rob Carrington and Camden Faint and things like that getting dropped, and it came out to a selection of about 10 of us. By the way, Wouter Peters had been up the road for about an hour at this point, trying to keep us away, and it was only at the bottom of the last climb we actually really saw him properly and caught him. So he stayed away all up here. So a group of about 10 of us plus him made it over the top there together. Me, all the usual suspects. Anthony Nalder, Dave Rollins looking strong, Callum Kennedy. A couple of guys I don't know that well, actually. We'll show you the results. So that's the selection, and that's what it took to get into this selection. And as I say, I was pretty much on my limit. Fast freewheeling, a few attacks on the descent, nothing coming to much. And in the final showdown, Admiral Hill, sort of a 20-minute long climb. Some sections averaging well over 10%, up to 15% maybe on the wall. And that's where it all happened. The group climbed, caught Wada at the bottom, climbed together until a strong acceleration on the steepest parts of the wall by Dave Rollins, Anthony Nalder, and a couple of other guys. And I really, at this point, you can almost see in the power here, the power going up and up there, holding for about 2 to 3 minutes, 300, I can't, my eyes aren't that good, 360, 370 watts or so. My legs weren't, and other days I've been able to hold much closer to 400 up here, and I was a little more tired on this day for reasons I don't really know, but I wasn't able to hold them, and the selection went away, rode to the top, with Dave Rollins taking a really good win, me rolling in 10th, having quite a good battle with Matt Fricklington and another guy. I kept catching them and then going back when my hamstring cramped a bit. I should say though that, I take a cramp fix sachet with me at every race, and that has saved me in 4 of the last 5 races, meaning I've felt like I'm going to cramp, or I felt the start of cramp. I've taken this disgusting sachet of vinegary stuff. Within 90 seconds, the cramp is gone and pretty much staves it off. It did come back a little, my right hamstring on this last climb, but I was able to keep going at a fairly strong pace anyway, without the muscle completely locking up. I'm pretty sold on Cramp Fix. If you'd like to try it, there's a discount code for Cramp Fix at the bottom of this video. Check it out. So let's look at results, and I'll get into the juicy stuff. What do we got here? Results. If I move them in here, we had Dave Rollins winning from Anthony Nalder, James Ashley, who I don't really know, rounding off the podium, Josh Curtis, Luke McDermott, Callum Kennedy, Boston Bright, Max Houston, Matt Fricklington, and me rounding off the top 10. Look at some of those names: Nalder, Curtis, McDermott, Kennedy, Bright. All these guys who are much more suited to power to weight, i.e. they're powerful riders, but they're relatively slim, and that gives them a power to weight advantage when the going is steep. I'm built more like a time trialist, about 78, 79 kilos at the moment, and can supply probably the same sort of power. Who knows, maybe more, but I have more of a carcass to drag up the hill, and that's why you see guys like that doing better on the climbs and maybe struggling a little bit on the flat. Sucks for me being kind of more of an all-rounder because I never get to be really, really good at one thing. But hey, that's interesting to see those names at the top of the list. So congratulations in the Medio Fondo. So let's link up here to my network. This is shorter, do kind of the same course, but just straight up the Emils Hill at the end without doing the extra, 30 Ks or so out to the turnaround and back. A little bit easier and a little bit shorter. Here we go, Medio Fondo. We have got some photos. Yeah, Richard Henderson, winning from George Tompkin, Tom Finlay, Steve Chapman, old stager, he always goes really, really well. Jason Gestro, one of the FitLab riders, and classic case again of a good all-round rider, but who really needs steep terrain because of his size. Lots of, Scots College riders in there. Young riders, good to see. Henry Tompkin, he's a good rider. Coming in just outside of the top 10. But he will be good. John Carrington, hey, he had a good ride. Another one of my riders coming in 9th. Yeah, it's just fascinating to see how everything changes when it goes uphill. That's why, guys, power to weight. Okay, so speaking of that, I had a thought, which was, I was standing around at the start of the race, and Rob Kilmington said to me, hey, wow, go and check out this dude's bike over there. He's got this amazing lightweight bike, so I went and checked it out. And it was a Cannondale Super 6 frame, quite a small size, but it had been kitted out with probably every piece of Gucci German carbon bling known to man. Super lightweight, rock hard carbon saddle, THM clavicular crankset, THM brake set, or AX lightness, is it the same thing? Everything, a Chinese carbon wheel set, but the very lightest climbing version, which is as light if not lighter than any of the German madness. There's probably other tweaks on there I'm missing out on. Bottle cages, I think maybe THM models, just like a single kind of Mobius strip looking little chunk of carbon. Everything down to minimalist levels. This is not probably a bike that's going to suit a large, powerful rider, but a smaller rider, because it'd be too flexy. But for me, it probably wouldn't work. But for someone who wants to go uphill fast, and can afford, I don't know, probably $3,000 for a crankset like that, something like that. What kind of gains can you get out of it? Now that bike in total was 4.5 kilos. My bike, I ride my Chapter 2 Riri for an aero focus bike, just a standard Dura setup. It's a very kind of standard bike, Zip 404. Wheels on, 7.7 kilos. So all of that expense, let's say that's a $15,000 bike. My bike's maybe closer to 5 or 6 or 7. Well, on a $2 kilo basis, that is saving you, let's say that's $8,000 or something, saving you, let's call it 3.7 Oh, best part of 3 kilos. Just over 3 kilos, 3.2 kilos. So then I thought, okay, well, let's say on some alternate universe I had that sort of cash. Would that have, well, if I had that bike and that weight saving, well, would that actually have kept me on the wheel on this climb? Well, I figured it out. So I've zoomed in here. If you're looking at the screen, this is a section on Strava called Admiral Incline to Top, and this is the section where I lost most of the time, just so I could zoom in. I'm comparing against Anthony Norder because he was second and very close to Dave at the top. So in other words, I'm trying to figure out what sort of weight saving would I actually need, everything else being equal, to keep me on that wheel. Because, like, we've all been there. When you're struggling on a wheel and you're really at the peak of what you can produce in terms of power in that position, sometimes it's never very dramatic. It's just that they just ride away from you slowly. That's what happened to me. And, all of this time here, you can see hanging to about 2 kilometers into the sector, and then within another 2 kilometers, opening up 1 minute, almost exactly 1 minute in 2 kilometers. So, and that's on the steepest section you can see from the diagram here. So, what would happen if instead of on my 7.7 kg Riri aero bike, I was on top of the 4.5 kilo Cannondale Superlight climbing bike? Would that have made that difference? I don't know. So I figured it out. And here it is. I've just done a quick and dirty comparison on bikecalculator.com. It's pretty good for an all-round calculator to take into account power, weights. Even adds a few things to the algorithm, like whether you're generally riding clinches, what sort of position, of course the grade, if there's any headwind, which there wasn't, windless, when we did it, distance, temperature, elevation, time, and it gives you calories and any weight loss that you'd experience over that time from sweating. So what we want to know is, would that have saved me 1 minute in that period of time, in that chunk on the Superlight climbing bike? So first, I sent to the control, which is my bike, 79 kilo rider. I went and looked at my data. I averaged 360 watts exactly in that sector. Bike was 7.75 kilos. I weighed it. The grade was 7.9%. No headwind. The distance 1.9 kilometers. Just under 2 k's, 20 degrees. It was. I checked on my data. It's not going to make a huge difference, but it's nice for accuracy. And the time was within, this calculator worked out, within about 3 or 4 seconds. So, we've got our baseline. If we know that the time that took me in that condition was just over 7 minutes, 7 minutes and about 10 seconds, obviously I need a saving that would have got me cover that period of time, that distance, just over 6 minutes. About 6 minutes and 10 seconds. So let's have a look. All I need to do is change one condition, which is the bike weight. So I've just changed this in here from 7.75 kilos to 4.5 kilos. Let's have a look. Remember, I want to get down to about 6.05. Here it is. Now, that weight saving alone, everything else being equal, gets me to 6.82 minutes. So 6.8 minutes is about, 6 minutes, call it 45 seconds or something. So really only saving me, say, about 20, maybe 25 seconds or something. So only not even quite half of the distance I would need to, save. So no, on its own, you can't just throw $10,000 at a problem and make it go away to that degree. So I just went a little bit further with it and thought, well, let's take that super light bike then, pretend I was riding that, but also increase my power. I don't think I can really get a lot lighter. Yeah, I know you're all screaming at me, why not just use your body weight? Well, we've already seen about 4 kgs off the total system, or 3.5 kgs off the total system. Only really takes about 20 seconds off there. You know, I'm pretty lean, so to remove another 4 kgs of body weight, which would get me to around about the time I need, in other words, about 74 to 75 kilos, is probably going to get me under about 7% body fat, maybe 6%, and that might be sustainable for a short time. But for a long season where it's important to me to ride week in, week out, it's probably not, and I need to hover at 9 to 11% body fat for health. So, and also for my primary discipline, which is time trial. So that's not really an option. So what have we done? We've reduced the bike pretty much to its limits. Yes, you probably could even go lighter than the bike, but of course, let's say in some scenario you threw another $20,000 at the bike and took another kilo off. Well, that's only going to get you another, say, 10 seconds. So still not enough. So let's go. How much power do we need? And at the top here, you can just adjust that. If I just zoom the slider over from 360 where I was, see 400. So on my best day, I probably could have sustained 400 on there. What would that have got me? 6.23. So that shaves off another probably 20 seconds or so. That gets me within about 5 to 10 seconds of those guys. So not only would I have needed my best day on the bike, I would have needed a super light climbing bike. And in a way, it's good because it wouldn't have helped me. It would have improved my result, and I might have ended up with a top 5 or even a podium. But that's a lot of money and a lot of what ifs. Ultimately, it was only good for 10th. So I thought that was interesting. Can a super bike make up the little difference? No, not even the super bike, unfortunately. So there you go. It did remind me, though, about how in time trialing, it's a similar scenario. You know, you can throw money at aerodynamics problems, disc wheels, fancy skin suits, helmets and stuff, and it certainly helps. But ultimately, it's the combination of aerodynamics and power that you need in most time trials. All right. So, where's my phone here? I don't think there's any more particularly I need to say about PMP. Congratulations to the podium getters there. Yep. Okay. Last thing, Carrington. I'll just quickly go over the event because it was pretty boring. There was only 3 of us in A grade. Me, Chris Sutherland, and Lee Campbell, and all fit lab riders, which is good, but would have been nice. It was a day after a big event. The weather was bad. All of these things add up to not much in A grade. The other grades seem to have a decent amount of riders, especially, you know, all those things accounted for, but not really an A grade. So what do you do? Well, I'll tell you what I did in a sec. What do we got here? Masters Club. GRR means graded road race, as opposed to an HRR, like a handicap road race. HTT, Hill Climb Time Trial. You get the idea of GRR, Carrington circuit. Mostly flat, rolling, fast, one little decisive climb halfway through the lap. We did 5 laps. Perennial kind of favourite. People just like this course. If you haven't done it, do it. Moving time, 1 hour 36. Distance 60.7 kilometres. Climbing 149 metres. So if we did that 5 times, you can see that must be only, 20 metres. What was it? Yeah, about 30 metres elevation gain. But it gets steep in the middle. Work 1,602 kilojoules. 4, 5, 6, maybe 5 McDonald's hamburgers consumed in that hour and a half. Average of 37.9 kilometers per hour. Power 278. Effective power 306 watts. Quite a big distance. Again, not as big as difference power to effective power as in the previous day, because the actual power versus the actual power on the road was much the same. But some bursts in there. Heart rate was accurate this time, 136. It's really low, reflecting the relatively easy pace. 94 cadence. So, and as far as it went down, well, it was interesting because we've got 3 dudes, all riding 5 laps, and I'm probably the strongest. You don't, like, how are you supposed to ride this? You know, in my mind, here's what I thought was, you know, okay, we're all, what would be, how am I going to win? Well, I'm going to win just by really staying with the other guys and trying to take relatively late. Let's say, and you know, hoping they're a bit worn out, split them up. So plan number A was, letter A was ride for 4 laps at a strong pace on the 4th climb. Climb hard, the idea being to pull away one of the riders with me. Both of them were pretty evenly matched. So the idea from my perspective tactically was get one of the riders to come with me, split them up so they can't work together in a team time trial to chase me back down. So I call this like the splitting method on a climb. And if anytime you've got a circuit like that where you can sort of dictate terms a little bit, it's good not to be too cocky and try to blow them up from the first lap when you're still fresh, because they will have that opportunity to work together and hunt you down. That didn't work for me actually, because Lee and Chris were pretty evenly matched on the climb. Even when I went out the front and boosted the pace to try to split them, neither could really get away from the other, so they just stayed together anyway. So I made the decision to come back to them at the crest of the hill, ride another lap, and then go for plan B. Plan B being on the final climb with about 10 kilometers to go, hit them as hard as I could on the final climb, knowing they will probably stay together again, but of course trying to boost up my advantage over them to 30 plus seconds so that I could time trial the remainder of the course and stay away, even if they did work together. That's ultimately what happened. So tactically, that worked. At the bottom of the climb, they knew exactly what I was going to do. This was not some surprise. And in such a small group, there's not really a lot of surprise going on. So you can see here, holding final climb, hit them right at the bottom, 1 minute, 36 seconds, 525 watts, a little dip and a recovery on the down, then time trialing for the remainder of the course at around 326 watts for another, it's about 10 minutes or so. So that's what I'm saying. I won that one. And both of those guys caught a bit of a truce and rolled across the line, pretty much second equal. So that was good. Here's another thing tactically I was thinking was, you know, like, it's a graded race. So technically it doesn't really matter if B or C grade actually caught us. It's unlikely to happen, but they're in a different grade. It's a different race. You don't want it to happen purely out of ego. But regardless, so it's like, well, how do I ride this then? Because, well, we don't really have to push the pace. What, are we all just going to have a Sunday ride around together? Ultimately, the fact is staying away from the other groups purely out of pride. Maybe also, from my perspective, making sure that the pace is high enough, the other guys are encouraged enough to feel like they should ride turns that will start tiring them out. So then the question is kind of like, if I'm semi-dictating what's going on, how hard should I ride? I mean, why don't I just ride well, I don't want to ride them off my wheel because they will gang up, time trial, and come back to me. I don't want to ride super soft because, well, I might not be able to ride super soft because they might be doing harder turns. My point is, don't ride super soft because you might get caught by another grade. So, and plus, they're not going to get very tired from that, so they might actually be able to hold on later in the race when I'm planning moves. So how hard do you ride? Well, as always, I think it's good to know what your lactate threshold is. What is the maximum steady state power you can ride in a given position that's not causing you to burn matches, but is near the top of your steady state power? You know this from FitLab testing. I know this because I test myself every week. I know that in the drops on a day, maybe after a race the day before, I probably can hold, if I was time trialing myself, maybe 350, 360 for up to an hour, say. That would be at my limit. So what I'm going to do is think, well, I want to drop a little lower than that to make it sustainable, just under my threshold. I want to be pulling through and doing turns somewhere around, somewhere between your maximum aerobic function, your lactate 2 and your lactate 4. For me, that's about 330 watts. That would be a real nice level. Well, because it was such a stable effort yesterday, I can actually zoom in and just look at a period of time where exactly that was happening. You can see from the data here from my heart rate, if you're looking at the screen from the power, you can actually see perfectly well where I'm taking turns and where I'm not. It was that steady. That's unusual, but that's cool. So if my target was to roll through, do a turn for 30 seconds to a minute at about 330 watts on the basis I mentioned earlier, to see how I did. If I take a chunk here, what did I do? I did 58 seconds, 323 watts. It's really good. So another look at one here. Here's another turn. This was 38 seconds at 343 watts. And let's look at a third data point here. My turn before that, 42 seconds, 322 watts. So if I'm looking at that from a coaching perspective, I'd say, based on that reasoning, I think that's pretty good. Most of those turns averaging between 30 seconds and a minute, in the middle of max aerobic function, and lactate threshold averaging somewhere between about 325 to 345 watts. I'm pretty happy with that. So that's my reasoning. So that was, I hope that helps talk through tactics in a scenario like that, in a race like that, and the sort of reasoning behind it. I always like to think when I'm training or racing, on what basis are you doing what you're doing? You better have a reason, be able to explain it. Show you're working. It's my 5th form math teacher used to say. Gosh, just a total bitch. My friend Tice Robinson, I think it was, chucked a slice of cheese from my sandwich. You know those weird flat slices of yellow cheese your mum would put in your sandwich? Like pre-sliced cheese that come in a plastic. Yeah, I had one of those, and we were messing around, and he got one. He just chucked it straight up, and it hit this lampshade. And because of the physics of it, it really adhered in this flat, square, yellow chunk. And because of the light, it kind of baked on there and dried out, I guess. And every time I looked up at that lampshade in my 5th form maths class, I would see this piece of cheese. And I had 2 thoughts. I thought it was funny as hell that it was still there and the cleaner hadn't cleaned it off or whatever. Probably hadn't noticed it. And I felt this weird sense of shame. Like, how can I let this happen? I've defiled my school, or something like that. It's probably still there. Hutt Valley High School. In one of those crappy classrooms. Chunk of cheese still stuck on the ceiling. That's all I'm saying. Alright, guys. Thanks for listening. It's always a pleasure when you come and say you listen. Thank you. We have to thank FitLab, Tailwind Nutrition, Biomaxa, and Capital Cycles. We will be at the Carrington Massive Cycling Club 40 kilometre age group time trial champs next weekend at Karucha. Come along and get aerodynamic. If you'd like to see me about any of those sorts of matters, aerodynamics, power, training, email me, steve@fitlab.co.nz, or go to our FitLab website, fitlab.co.nz. I'll see you on the weekend, get it on! Oh, and one more thing. Congratulations to Bruce Cook, my FitLab rider, successfully taking the National Masters title for the 750 metre time trial in Cambridge over the weekend at the Shank Masters Nationals. Marvellous to see also the Wellington team taking silver in the team sprint. Also Jonathan Leonard winning the 3000 IP. Wild success for a lot of Wellington riders. It's cool to see. Congratulations, Cocky.